Hey, welcome to another recording of Rebel Therapy Podcast. I'm Katie, one of your hosts.
And I am your other host, Michelle. Welcome.
So, Michelle, we have a foundational question that we're going to riff on today.
About why do people get stuck in a default setting? And we can talk about even what we mean about that. Like what first comes to you when I say getting stuck in a default setting?
What comes to me when I think of default setting is a combination of a personality trait, sort of the way you are, the way you're born, right? That is pretty immutable, actually. And then a strategy that intersects with that you've learned to create for yourself to get what you need from your environment or whatever else. And I think the intersection of those two things means that when you perfect this strategy, or we would call it a creative adaptation, let's say, same idea, it works. And so when it works, we keep doing it.
Yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, that tracks for me. The feeling of being stuck, I think, is such a common human experience and such a common thing that people come to therapy for. And like often they don't even have the full language to describe it. But I do think it is sometimes people getting stuck in a default setting that they're trying to use that is no longer working. And it's actually confusing and maybe maddening. And you're like, I don't know what else to do. This is how I've always approached this. And I think, as we've talked about before, when something comes from childhood or something you've practiced for a long time, it can feel very natural. So you're like,
Yep.
well, this is how I'm supposed to do it. So if the way I'm supposed to do it doesn't work, then what? What am I left with here?
I often hear from people when they're talking about things that are seemingly not really working in their lives. They'll say things like, yes, but I'm just kind of wired like this. And I'll say, yeah, you're not actually. I mean, most of the time it's that combination, but it's really more of a conditioning thing, right? So if this tactic of, let's think of an example, performing, being really good at whatever it is, right? And so you get your sense of belonging, your sense of value, your sense of validation, whatever, because you are a type A personality, let's say, or because you're very busy and you get stuff done and you're self-motivated, that kind of thing. Strategy for survival, right, is very effective in certain environments. So in a professional environment, in this world, this society, I would argue, it can be extremely effective. It's sometimes not very effective when you apply that same strategy to a personal environment, let's say. And I think people get confused because they think, well, I'm failing, it's not working. I'm like, well, yeah, it's not working because that tool doesn't match the situation. It's not because you as a human are failing, you're just using the wrong tool, right? And I think also people are unaware of what they can shift versus what they can't. And often I notice people, and I've done this in my own life, trying to shift something that is actually a personality trait that I cannot change, as opposed to trying to shift the strategy that I've developed for myself. And so there's some knowledge that's required, I think, right? Which is often where we come in as therapists to help people kind of put up a mirror and say, okay, well, this you got control over, this you don't. So let's figure that stuff out. Yeah.
There has to be a certain level of reflection and processing that needs to happen to realize what are the cornerstones of my personality and what are the things that I've just learned to do that were working for me. How do I develop different tools because these ones aren't working and I want something different, right? It's one thing if
Yes.
you're like type A and you're like, I just want a great career and that's your single-minded focus and that's what you do and you're very successful at it. Great,
Fabulous. Yeah.
And so it's actually more about when you have a different want or desire or goal and you try to approach it in the same way and it's not yielding the results that you imagined. But you keep kind of hitting your head against the wall.
Yeah, no, and I love that you say that because what comes up all the time is taking it out of this binary of good and bad. I don't think that's useful or relevant. It's not good or bad. It's just, is it achieving the outcome you want or is it not? I'll often say to people, this work is not about throwing away the strategies that you've created for yourself that actually work because they do work. You wouldn't do it if they didn't work. But is this the right strategy, to your point, for the situation and the outcome that you're trying to achieve? And if it's a self-taught strategy, how efficient is it? Because often it's not that efficient. Often there can be a little bit of streamlining or whatever. So, you and I've talked about this before. A lot of it is about maximum flexibility. So not only do I have this one strategy that works a lot of the time, I'm going to augment my toolbox, we use that all the time, with these alternative strategies so that I can respond to the world as needed, as opposed to this one script where I do get caught because my hammer isn't working or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And one of the examples I was thinking about was like the use of humor, right? And I think
Mm.
that can be a combination, like you said, of a personality trait and then also maybe an adaptation. I don't think there's any coincidence that a lot of comedians have struggled in the past or have a dark
Oh,
sense of humor. They developed it as a strategy to survive. And so
yeah,
a lot of the times, humor can be great. It can bond people, it can break the ice, it can lighten up a really
smooth things
dark
over.
situation. Like
Yep.
there's just like so many beautiful uses for humor. But I've definitely experienced in my life where I've actually experienced it as distancing from someone.
Yeah.
Like they're actually
Yes.
deflecting intimacy,
Hmm.
using their humor as a shield. And so to me, that's when it really feels like it speaks to like a survival strategy when you're using your humor as a shield because you're scared of being hurt.
And I love the way you're using shield, because for me as a therapist in a session, if a client is using humor, I'll often ask them, I'll point it out, and often they're not even aware that they're doing it, which is interesting because it's so wired like that. It's just conditioned so well. So then when I call it out initially, I'll ask, who's that for? Was that for you or was that for me? And often it's actually for me, which is ultimately for them anyway. But it's like, well, if I smooth it over and I don't stress this person out, that makes it easier for me. So to your point, it works really well. And the better you are at it, the more seamless it seems. But it does, sometimes I'll describe to people, it's almost like there's a pane of glass between us. I can see you and I know you're there, but I can't get to you. Right. And I
Yeah,
think that that's, the protective nature of humor as a
totally.
strategy. Alternatively, for example, if this is a strategy that you have and you have to go to a really scary cocktail party with a bunch of people that you don't know and don't trust, humor is an amazing strategy. Amazing. Or you have to go give some huge talk in some business capacity or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you can use humor, amazing, right? But if you're trying to get close to someone you love and you can't tolerate that sense of vulnerability or openness or fear or whatever, then it does get in the way. So again,
Yeah.
right? It's just about what is the strategy for the situation. And if this one doesn't work in this scenario, what does? And can we work to create alternative strategies that you can choose? Yeah.
You were reminding me of something in a therapy session where I think sometimes people use humor because they want you to like them.
It's a
You
pretty
know?
good strategy for life, right? I mean, we all know charming people.
And it's great. It's really effective, but not necessarily in therapy, right? And I think it's almost like that's the place where you're trying to look at what are personality traits and what are like tools, and have you
Mhm.
melded them together inextricably, right?
Yeah.
And you think, okay, well, if I drop this tool, then I'm dropping my humor. And it's like, well, no, you just actually need to apply it with another tool. You don't actually lose the core of who you are. And I think that's a big piece of when people
Yeah.
feel stuck in their default setting, they get scared about giving it up or like shifting it because they think it's part of their identity. And well, if I'm not a type A who just goes for it and gets what they want, then who am I?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And, that brings up this idea that often the interplay between our personality traits and the strategies that we create for ourselves that, really support those are things that we're praised for. You're so
Yeah.
ambitious, you're so driven, you're so motivated, and well-meaning adults telling kids, oh, your achievement is so amazing. And then we end up building this foundation of identity on this thing that is not actually us. It's what we do, but it's not who we are. And that can get confusing. So to your point, there's some fear, I think, often around, well, if I put this down, then who the hell am I? Right. And so that's that detangling of the personality, the person that you are versus these things that you've done to survive. Again, that idea that nothing here is bad, nothing needs to be discarded. It's actually about adding to, not subtracting from. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but like the profound vulnerability you can feel when you're like, if I put this tool down that people have told me I'm great for, will anybody
Hmm.
like me? Like, it's sort of like this, I think almost like primal human fear, right? Of being like excluded and alone. And these are the things that people have told me they like about me. If I don't have them, what do I have? And I think oftentimes there's a confusion of the message too, right? People might
Yeah.
have praised you for something, but that's maybe not necessarily the only reason that they like you. And hopefully the close people in your life love you for multiple reasons. And it's not because about what you do or how you perform or your default setting.
No,
Yeah.
no, and this comes up. I am lucky enough to work with, any number of really cool, interesting, dynamic, but also motivated and driven teenagers, right? And often they have been praised their whole lives for great accomplishments. Look what they've done. They've done all these great things. And the thing is, they have done great things, and that's amazing. And I think that we talk about it sometimes, but if I asked their parents, do you just love your kid because they've achieved some things? The parents would be like, what? What are you talking about? Of course not. And
Yeah.
yet inadvertently that's the message, right, that gets through to the kids. It's like, oh, I guess I'm worthy because I'm good at stuff. And so a lot of it is a misunderstanding, right? So to your point, if I
Yeah,
put things
no. Yeah.
I'm good at, maybe I won't be lovable, and so it's a chance to get in there first of all and understand what the script is that you've learned to tell yourself, right, that
Yeah.
is probably not based in reality because you figured it out when you were a kid and you probably misunderstood what was going on. But you have to identify what that script is first to be able to go through and go, oh, hold on, kind of debunk some of these old assumptions that are masquerading as fact, right?
Yeah.
And then to the point of the stuckness, just understanding some of that, I think, bringing some awareness to that can unstick someone, help someone get unstuck.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like when you think about the example of, people feeling like they're loved for being good at something, they're going to strive to do that throughout their life. And there's not anything inherently wrong with trying to be good at things, but I do think it actually can be a real hindrance when you want to learn something new and you're not immediately good at it. And you're just
Yes.
like either give up or you're just like tell yourself that you now are a failure, or you suck, or no one will like you. Maybe not consciously, but like the actual feeling. And so you're just like, well, I don't need to learn that. That's no longer important to me. And actually, it's something that could have been really rewarding and fulfilling for you.
Listen, I avoided sports until I was in my like mid 30s because I was never particularly good at it. I'm still not particularly good at it. But to your point exactly, so either you beat yourself up about it, or in my case, I just avoided anything I wasn't immediately great at.
Yep.
Whatever, that's fine. I mean, it still meant that I was successful in lots of different areas, but it narrowed my experience of life. So
Absolutely.
understanding that, yeah, some things you're going to be really great at, that's amazing, and other things you're going to suck at, but it's worth trying. Why not? Right? And having the confidence to do that, it just feels better integrated and easier and more fun, right? So that's, I think, one of the results of getting unstuck that we don't really think about as much is that it makes life more fun, actually, more enjoyable. And that feels important.
And allowing yourself to be bad at something without beating yourself up. It's like I think that can be maybe fun, but also you might experience something unexpected. You might learn something unexpected about yourself, and you might actually feel very proud about sticking with that thing because you're like, this was not easy. I was not good at this, but I wanted to learn it, and so I did.
Well, the word that actually came up for me as you were talking was freedom. I think it's very freeing to go, you know what? I suck at this. Actually, I don't really care because I'm just here for the experience. And that's pretty great. And if you think about life generally, you start out life as a child, you don't know anything anyway. I'll say that to parents. Why are we getting upset with kids who are making mistakes? They're fledgling humans. They don't know what they're doing. That's the whole point. Like, none of us knows what we're doing. So I prefer to think of life as a series of experiments where you try a thing. If you like the outcome, you keep going. If you don't like the outcome, you try something else, right? But it takes it out of that good, bad binary that I just don't think is useful. Did it work in the way you wanted it to? How do you feel about it? Did you enjoy that or did you not enjoy that? And from there, we figure out where we want to go.
And being able to take apart and appreciate the different elements of it, where it's like, yes, this part of it was really hard, but I also got this kernel of something that felt meaningful to me. So that's what's going to keep me going back. Maybe 95% of it was painful, but the 5% that was good, it was really good. And I'm going to keep trying.
And it's a learning experience. So I'm going to keep trying to see where I go.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about developing resilience and self-motivation and self-discipline, all things that we have to learn, no child is born knowing how to do these things. I think often it's easy to be motivated when it's something that's easy and fun. It's a lot harder to be self-motivated when it's hard or you don't want to do it. So both sides need to be in place, I think, if we're going to be a fully realized, integrated human. And it seems like human nature, this is anecdotal, I'm not a scientist in this way, so keep that in mind. But it seems like pretty solidly human nature to avoid the things that aren't fun. That's fine. We still need to know how to address them.
We're organisms like anything else, right? It's like the path of least resistance, but sometimes you don't want to live your life that way in every avenue.
Sometimes, it does make sense to hang in for the 5% because this time it's 5%, next time it's 7%, then it's 12, on and on. And now you've mastered something, and that feels pretty amazing. All right. Well, I would be very curious, putting it out to our listeners. Are there things that you look at and think, is this fundamentally me, or is this something that I've learned? What are some of the strategies that you've used successfully in your life? What are some of the ways that you show up in the world? And how are they working for you?
Yeah. In which ways do you feel a little bit stuck? That's a source of information for you, something to actually investigate. Yeah.
All right. And always, if you're willing, please like and subscribe. It does help us out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.